Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. We are reconvening now for our final session. Thank you so much for your patience and your time throughout all of this conference. I'm going to hand over to the Secretariat of the APPG to give you an overview of the conference. But before that, we have an announcement. Over to you.
You're talking about the Berlin thing. Yes,
Yeah. Thanks for congregating again in plenary session. We have a very important announcement to make. It has to do with the session, that I convened yesterday on Pan-Africanism. One of the very, very important outcomes of the conversations with the panelists, particularly with Laura, who comes from the Free University in Berlin, Germany, is that next year, 2024, on the anniversary of the start of the 1885 Berlin Conference that partitioned Africa, we're going to have a conference in Germany to begin to involve our communities, led by African communities of resistance, both on the continent and in the diaspora, to undo the harm of the Berlin Conference involving progressive forces in Germany. And that is one of the outcomes of this particular conference. Thank you. Laura should have been here to say it herself, but she's kind of disappeared somewhere. Thank you very much.
Do you want to continue summarizing?
Each from the secretary?
Or you can
the three of you.
We've been asked as members of the Abuja Secretariat to have some initial public sharing of views on this conference. And for me, it's not possible because, people know how I feel about it. 30 years ago, as somebody said, we were with Benny Grant in Birmingham at the launching conference of the African Reparations movement. And I would say very frankly, as somebody put it, the Mangamizi that Benny Grant had to confront, together with us, is what killed him. And it was devastating to the point that it led to the demise of the African Reparations movement. But those of us who he left behind fought very hard to try and keep the ancestral intergenerational flame that Benny was very clear was a Pan-African liberation torch alive. And for that, we went through excruciating pain and suffering that cannot be described here. And along the journey, we lost more of those who were there, like Dorothy Kuya, and others. Baz Johnson, the names abound, right? And that is why when our efforts, very modest, challenging efforts, led to people, younger people, like Sister Esther Stanford Hossein, and Bell Reparative, who I met as a student here, now bringing us 30 years after to this place to talk about that, impacts on me very terribly. But also with extreme joy, because as I said, 30 years from now, some of us will not be here with you. But that's, we can say, the likes of Bell, Sister Esther, Kobina and his team, the Aya Collective, and all those who have given their voluntary service to make this conference, with all its strengths and weaknesses, but also to happen so that the efforts of the many, many millions of our ancestors who perished and whose names we will never know in full, and their labors can be brought to fruition. Because we are confident that beyond this room, there will be many, particularly from the younger generation, of Africans and non-Africans who will carry this torch forward to the victory that all of humanity deserves from our African pain and suffering. And so your presence to support this modest effort to reinstitutionalize what those who have gone before from the very shores of Africa when they've been torn away, started in resistance. We are grateful. And being here with the likes of my elder, Achaba Adaisebo, the founder of Black History Month here, and being with you in a spirit where we are prepared to criticize openly before you the shortcomings of our generations, so that you, in the African tradition and spirit, must do better than us. And that is why we will not be sparing in our criticisms. But you also have a right to be critical of us. And that criticism and self-criticism is very much part of the ethics of true Pan-African reparations. You cannot put it any better than Professor Maulana Karenga put it in his conversation with us today. We've heard it all, but one thing we are insistent upon, this is no talking shop, and will not be talking shop, right? The challenge is the work each and every one of you in this space go out to do, together with us. And the challenges we face together, criticism and self-criticism, but also with discipline. Iron must sharpen iron in our struggle. So let us not spare each other, in terms of the weaknesses that we all bring to this struggle. Nobody is without weaknesses. Benny and I, at some point, were not talking to each other, though we remained on the same side of the barricades. Because neither did he spare criticizing me, and I didn't spare criticizing him, with all the respect that I had for him. And so going forward, fortunately, we're in times when our African people's resistance is in resurgence, as the situation in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, And Haiti, let's not forget, testified. We will overcome the internal and external enemies of our struggle. And be assured, wherever I'll be 30 years from now, I'll still be part of this struggle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are a number of secretariats working together, a number of organizations working together and collaborating to support Bell in the work that we're doing. So before I start from Afford, which is one of the secretariats, I just wanted to greet everybody and really thank you for your contributions over the last two days, and it's been incredible energy, incredible insights, incredible feedback, and incredible sharing of practice from all our different communities. When we started yesterday morning, and the night before, I was thinking, how is it going to go? How is it going to go? I came in yesterday morning, and you wondered, could we bridge some of the gaps and cleavages that had prevented us before joining together and working together towards a common purpose? I sat down on the initial plenary and I looked up. Please look up. And there was a pyramid, and we were seated under a pyramid. And I was reassured that even the Quakers, as Robin says, borrow from our practice about how you do good speech. So I knew we would be doing good speech in here, because here we are. And we must always look around us in this African Atlantic space, because our presence is everywhere. Disguised, hidden, but it's there and we must reclaim it. So the Egyptians talked about good speech, and there's been a lot of that over the weekend. And the good speech was us coming together to honor our ancestors and what they went through, and to ask for accountability, and to ask for the structural impact on their descendants to be considered in this African Atlantic space. I was also reassured, and I'm feeding back from the energy of the last 2 days, that we continue to build on the practice of one of our recent great ancestors in this country, Bernie Grant, of blessed memory, and his work of structuring and framing the struggle for reparations inside of a Pan-African framework. And from the outset, we have kept to task on that point. We know in that African Atlantic space, a lot has happened. There are different locations, and we supported each other. The last major push was against South Africa, and all of us were united. We weren't there to support Haiti at the beginning, and Haiti has paid a terrible price for being the first. And we have to pay attention to Haiti again. Haiti is our jewel, and if we ignore Haiti, we betray our struggle. So the Pan-African focus of this work has to go to all the different locations. The UK is important. What is it they said? It's the House of Pharaoh. I've edited an anthology called Empire Windrush, but I wasn't concerned about 48. I was concerned about the African Atlantic. And people said, why was Windrush important? The most important thing for me for Windrush was that our intellectuals always met in Pan-African conferences and everything else, but it was the first time that all of us, me as an African from the continent, we met on a popular level in the House of Pharaoh. And this site is very important in the work that we do. We mustn't forget all the other sites, but this site has all the artifacts. This site was where the laws were set in place, and it was very good hearing from Jacqueline yesterday about those laws and how it created freedom, unfreedom, and how it was managed. Every time it was tested whether you could kidnap and traffic people. Every time it was tested in the UK, it was thrown out because it was never legal. There is no jurisdiction that allows for kidnap. Yeah? So there's a game that has been played here, and it resonates to the present. When Mary Prince came here, she was able to win her freedom here. When others came here, they were able to. But in the colonies, in those dark spaces, you can do what you want legally. And that was the game. And I'm glad that Jacqueline is starting to unravel that in terms of the legal struggle. And that idea of the different spaces and different legal regimes is still with us. That is what Guantanamo Bay is. Yeah? Because they daren't bring those people back to the Americas to be tried because there is habeas corpus, there is a legal framework. So when we talk about this, we have to do it at the high level, and I'm glad over the last 2 days we were doing it at a high level and looking at that economic system that is set up, and that was set up as a result of the papal bull that was established, that establishes the Western hegemonic system, that establishes white supremacy, that centers the world around Europe, because that is the big work. And it is really big work to do to unravel it. And at the center of that big work and how you make money was the focus of labor. And that European system benefits from a number of things. It benefits from the free land and gold of the Americas, and the Native Americans are fighting the battles for that, and we must work in collaboration with them. But it benefits profoundly initially from African labor. So that's what it does. And so we come in and we do co-create this space. And Robin, in his excellent presentation this morning, talks about both the brawn and the brain in terms of how we recreate that space, or co-create that space. So go out and claim the space. We're dead at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and if we can't claim the Atlantic Ocean after 20 million dead, what can we claim? Yeah? So we need to do that. We've shared our practices, and we've heard different voices, and it's gotten passionate occasionally. But let us not be derailed by that. We agree on 90% of stuff, perhaps. So we will argue about the 10%, but let's keep focused on the 90%. Let's not get derailed by the 10% that we disagree about. Somebody said that Freud had this term, the neurosis or something, or small differences, that people who are very close together fight over the smallest things because that's the only thing that differentiates them. And we mustn't do that. We mustn't fall into that trap. We must stay focused on where we're going and how we introduce accountability for what happened to our ancestors, and how also we make sure that the structural challenges that their descendants face are removed. And as Karenga said earlier, we remake the world, not just for us, but for all of us. So, thank you. So we've all worked our different silos. I came to understanding of these silos because in '95 we started a Remembrance Day. And I reached out to some Rasta brothers in Tottenham where I grew up, and went to them and said, you know, Elder brethren, will you come and support the Remembrance Day? And the elder said, why are you doing Rastafari? Are you doing Selassie? I said, no, it's about remembering the people who died. He said, well, if you're not doing Rastafari and Selassie, then I need to think about it. I'm like, no, you don't need to think about the millions who died. And he said, well, boy, I'm just doing this. Later on, they did come because they understood that all our struggles are linked. So the work I'm doing around restitution is linked. The work around the economic sphere is linked. The legal work that Jacqueline is doing is linked. The education work that you're all doing, the work about naming the criminals and putting and talking about their crimes, all of this work is linked. And we must get past where our Rasta brother was and say, well, I'm just on my track. And because the Rastas, I went to him because they'd done some important work, you know. Dennis Brown has sung about the promised land, and Burning Spear said, remember the days of slavery, and they had kept the idea alive. So we must all come together and collaborate. I'm going to end because Belle will be talking about some of the common positions that we can have moving ahead. But I'll say to people here who are not in an organization, as Kofi said, we're here to do work. If you're not in an organization and you want to get involved, there's so many organizations here. Join one that speaks to where your heart is and what you want to do, because there's a lot of work to do. There have been great organizations doing the legal work, others doing work around economics, around psychology. I mean, there's so much work to do. So if you don't have one, please join and help us do this. But we need to stay focused, and I'm going to end with this. This movement, I've been involved with it, you know, probably since the late 80s. And when we started, momentum built up. Esther and others did a lot of wonderful work in the 90s, where the African world united in 2001, and we went to Durban. And we did win at that UN conference in Durban in 2001, the fact that what had happened to our ancestors was a crime against humanity. And we came together for that. And the momentum was building. That conference happened end of August, and it finished on September the 8th, 2001. 3 days later, the Twin Towers came down, and we lost 20 years. The momentum evaporated overnight. I will say to you that we're going to be facing other challenges as we move forward on this agenda, but we mustn't lose another 20 years. What happened was things happened quietly. The CARICOM 10-point plan was there in 2014. There were other initiatives that came on, but the kind of movement we have here, we must stay focused. We must not allow it to be derailed. You know, two things happened when it got back to this level. One was the murder of George Floyd, and then the other was that after 20 years, we left Afghanistan. Yeah? and that arc of the Twin Towers was over. So other things will come up to derail this struggle, but we must not allow the struggle to be derailed. And the intensity that we have at the moment, we have to maintain. In the next month, which I'll be attending, the AU and Ghana will be having a reparations conference in Accra, and I will be taking some of the deliberations from here into that conference. And at that level, the AU, CARICOM, everybody's focused, and we must stay focused here in the House of Pharaoh, and bring the things that we have to say to it. So that's where I'm going to end. Thank you for 2 days of really powerful witnessing, powerful contributions. Let's stay focused around the common positions that Belle and Esther will talk about. Thank you.
I've told we have to keep it brief, so I would first like to welcome up the Pan-African Reparations Youth Forum people who have been here today. And there are also many other people in the audience who yeah, probably. I mean, the main reason why I'm emotional anyway is just because of the incredible eldership of people like Kofi Mawuli-Klue, who many of you know, and people like Esther Stanford-Kosei, and and I really think this just is seriously important because these people have seriously sacrificed from their own pockets, from their own time, from their own health on a daily basis. I witness this so that we can have spaces where even though they're emotionally charged and they're difficult, we're doing this only so that we can actually build a movement that can take us out of this hellhole that we've been born into. And I'm so honoured that they've honestly filled so many holes in so many lives of so many people who are really the suffering wretched of the earth, who the system has spat out and chewed out, and they pay attention to so many of us when the system tells us that, you know, our struggle is insignificant and that we can't win. And if it wasn't honesty for the clarity, and people in the room who know, if it wasn't for the clarity, the ancestral wisdom with which these people are genuinely walk with conviction to teach some of us, with all of our struggles, this whole day, many of you wouldn't be alive and you don't even know what I mean, but I'm genuinely serious that these people are sacrificing because the struggle is so real and they're putting in the work, and I just firstly wanted to honour them because fortunately, it falls on our shoulders as young people to take that mantle, and sometimes it feels incredibly difficult and nigh on impossible. And so this tribute, first and foremost, and the truth we want to share is first and foremost actually a tribute to the freedom fighters who luckily actually are the real soldiers who are taking up arms right now in defense of our sovereignty. And it's without them, this conversation would be pointless. And throughout this conference, we have not paid enough attention to the real names of our freedom fighters. And we've still allowed too much ego, brands, people promoting their brands. They're all like, who gives a fuck about your brand? Really and truly. What the fuck are we doing? And why does it take 2 days of a conference for us to realize we're not brands? I mean, chattel enslavement gave us branding, and we're still here giving ourselves brands and companies to try and lead. What struggle is that? And that's why I was getting upset, because I know there are many people who continue to stand up for something far more righteous than even I can dream of. And we're not paying respect when we enter these spaces, when we come in with our own intentions. We want to derail it when we didn't even read the statement, conference, or purposes, and we don't even know what this is fucking about. So if you don't know what this is about, go home and leave. The few of us who want to do this and walk on this journey, standing alongside the billions of Africans who rise because they don't have a chance to do anything else, let us get on with that work. And let's have that critical engagement so we can learn truly together. So I'll pass over to actually someone who can put this in better words than me, Tanita LJ or Afua, who's my sister, and who has really, really filled a real gap in part of our organising structures to come on as one of the coordinators of our African learning community in the Pan-African Reparations Youth Forum.
So thank you. Thanks to my brother Kobina. And like I said, I mean, you said it perfectly, to be honest, right? We are so grateful and indebted to your leadership, to your guidance, to your eldership, and the way that it's helped us to be able to actually really critically engage and see the things that we see when we come to this conference right today. So as I said, we're part of the Pan-African Reparations Youth Forum. And what we've seen today is there's been a clear divide, right? There's people who are talking about compensation, people who are just using slaves, talking about Black British. And you see other people who are trying to talk about we're Africans who were enslaved. And we are talking about the self-determination of our people. We're talking about sovereignty. We're talking about Pan-Africanism. We're talking about the people on the continent right now who are fighting those battles, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, right? And this divide we're seeing is a tiny example of the wider movement capture that is happening, right? Like, this movement is literally being bought off, people who have bought their way into things like these conferences, people who are spending money, which is well-funded profits of genocide, so they can come into these spaces and tell us what our struggle should and shouldn't be. And we as young people are saying that's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not going to work. We've really had enough. We've really had enough. And so that's why we wanted to come up here and we wanted to say this today. We've been very disappointed by, like my brother said, the brands, the opportunism, the careerism, the liberalism. That's not what this is about. That is not what this is about. This is not why we've gathered here today. This is a very important space, and we need to make use of this space. We don't even understand how much we have here, and we need to understand that we need to be in service of our people globally. We're not standing here on the backs of our ancestors to cut a deal for ourselves. We're standing here so that we can have a future for our children. And this intergenerational work is difficult. This intergenerational work is difficult and it's challenging, but we need you to be honest about your mistakes. You need to be honest about your failures, about all these things that went wrong, because we don't have time to be repeating the same mistakes. We don't have time to be running around like headless chickens. We have a movement to organize and to win, and that's what we wanted to get clear to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Secretariat and to the Pan-African Youth Forum.
Before Belle speaks, there's one thing I want to say. That when we met Belle as a student activist, and even then, we had to actually persuade her to take up positions she was offered in the NUS Black Students Campaign. It was challenging then, but she decided to do it because she listened to elders' advice. She's fought her way through, sometimes lonely on her own, but this is where she's brought us, with her strengths and her weaknesses. She deserves enormous respect. She's earned Yes, Belle has earned her place on the shoulders of our giants in this struggle, because she's worked for it. And many people will forget. In those days, when there was a burying of what Benny Grant and us had done with the African Reparations movement, it took Bell to get the NUS Black Students Campaign to pass a resolution in support of reparations that we had worked with them on. Bell has earned her place in this struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to all of you. Thank you to the Secretariat. Thank you to them who I've been listening to for 2 decades. I count now, 2 decades. And with that education, I was on firm footing. And thank you so much to the Pan-African Youth Forum. I know I've challenged you this weekend with my timekeeping, or trying to keep to time, in particular Kobana. But what I want to do before I hand over to Esther, who's going to go over the journey from the Abuja Declaration to now, is to put up the conference statement, after which we'll make some thank yous and we will promptly leave the building. No, but honestly, thank you so much for those words, and thank you to our Secretariat, who, without their tenacity, would not have got all of the things that we got on the agenda today. So please give a round of applause to our Secretariat. Can I please have the conference statement on the screen? It will be on the screen in 2 minutes. It's a tech issue, but it's okay. What I will then do to save on time is I'm going to take the opportunity to do the thank yous now. To a very wide range of people who made this happen. So it was very complex to put this program together, and obviously our Secretariat have been fantastic in curating the program and you know, showing up today and showing that leadership, the leadership that Kobana and Tanita talked about. I think that's so important. But there are some people who actually gave of their money. And I think it's very important to acknowledge them, other than the Quakers who have given us this space. And if I was to tell you how much it would cost to have a space like this, your jaw would drop, and you'd probably be so humbled that they've allowed us in this space. I think it's really important. So can we thank the Quakers, our main overall sponsor. And quite literally, until last week, we did not have the money to put it on. And I will say we'll cut that fine. And I know it sounds like a strange thing to say when you see what was delivered at the end of the day, but there are a number of people that we do have to thank for that. And that will be the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust, Lee Day, the Ubele Initiative, Operation Black Vote, and Lee Jasper. Thank you. We have a number of other partners who gave of themselves in other ways through their time, through their media, and those are very important as well. We have Birthmark of Africa, Stand Up to Racism, and the Society of Black Lawyers, and The Voice. I want to thank the staff of the Quakers building here, the Friends Meeting House. I think they've been absolutely exemplary and extremely patient. And I promise it won't be like yesterday. And we will all leave promptly. And also, in terms of how today happened, there are many volunteers that assisted us with today, so please give them a round of applause. But I have to give absolute thanks to my own parliamentary team who, in their free time, I might add, and it is their free time, so please don't quit your jobs. In their free time, working until late at night, working weekends, working all of this weekend, did literally all of the administration, printing of the documents, designing of the documents, getting all of these different things in place, doing the social media. They did all of these things, and I'm so privileged to have such a fantastic team. I'm so proud of all of you. And thank you so much. And as I said, please do not quit your jobs, having been put under pressure this weekend. So thank you to everybody that helped make this a success. As I said, we wanted to end, as they did in Abuja 30 years ago, with a unifying statement. You heard before that there are many, many different people who don't necessarily agree on exactly how we achieve reparations, but I am sure that we agree on the fact that there should be reparations, that there should be a discussion. And if there's anything that I come away from this weekend with, it is that simple fact, and the fact that we have been able to discuss such a wide range of issues. And I have to apologize because I know some of the sessions ran concurrently and people were complaining, but I want to go to this one and this one at the same time. Some people were walking in and out of rooms confused, and we'll hopefully be able to get some of these recordings up online so that you can hear them, and hopefully we'll be invited back to have further discussions. It's ready to go. Can everybody see this? So the UK Reparations Conference held in London, England, October the 21st to the 22nd, 2023, organised by the All-Party Parliamentary Group for African Reparations, 30 years after the Abuja Pan-African Conference on Reparations for African Enslavement, Colonisation and Neo-Colonisation. Through bringing together hundreds of experts, scholars, elected officials, activists, community leaders and campaigners from across the globe, discussed at length the crucial matter of reparative justice for the damage done to peoples of African descent across the world through forced enslavement, colonisation and neo-colonialism. Recognises that the damage to African peoples has left an enduring legacy resulting in global inequalities in international relations and economic governance, systemic racism and prejudice, unequal experiences in education, employment, criminal justice systems, healthcare and other walks of life. Conscious that compensation for injustice does not need to take form of capital transfer, but could include service to the victims or other forms of restitution. Holds the beliefs that the legacy of the enslavement and trafficking of peoples of African descent, colonisation and neo-colonialism will not be fully addressed nor corrected until reparative justice is pursued and achieved. We urge that this dialogue takes place by establishing an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth, justice and reparations. Calls upon national governments and global institutions that profited from forced enslavement, colonisation and neo-colonialism to acknowledge the responsibility they have to repair the lasting damage and engage in meaningful dialogue on how to begin the process of reparatory justice. Thank you very much, everybody. So I'm finally going to hand over to Sister Esther Stamford. It's Zosie who's going to give us the journey from the Abuja Pan-African statement until today.
Thank you. Okay, greetings. So much to take in and to process, and hearing everyone and feeling everyone and seeing everyone. So I just want to quickly read the rough draft of the Pan-African Reparations on the March from Abuja, 1993, through Birmingham, 1993, to London, 2023, a declaration of the Secretariat of the inaugural conference of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for African Reparations, Charting a Pathway Towards Reparative Justice, October the 21st to 22nd, London, UK. So we, as members of the Secretariat for the APGAR, which is the acronym for the All-Party Parliamentary Group for African Reparations, reaffirm our commitment to the fulfillment of the Abuja Proclamation arising from the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations held in Abuja, Nigeria, from April the 27th to the 29th, 1993, sponsored by the Group of Eminent Persons and the Organization of African Unities Reparations Commission, championed by Moshood Kashimowo Olawale Abiola, otherwise known as MKO Abiola, Honorary Supreme Military Commander of the Oyo Empire and aristocrat of the Egba clan. We reaffirm that the UK contingent of the International Social Movement for African Reparations builds on the foundations set by the Abuja Conference and its follow-up processes, co-organized in particular in the UK by the then African Reparations Movement, UK, and many supporting organisations, under the co-leadership of the late Bernie Grant MP and many others. We commit to advancing the ethics of Pan-African reparations, advanced by our illustrious African ancestors, expressed in the keynote speech made today by Professor Molana Karanga, and we support the requirement for African reparations advocacy, organising and mobilisations to be premised on African epistemologies of repair or reparations, such as the Suruj Tar framework, expressed also in the conceptual framework articulated by Professor Chimwezu in 1993, presented in his Reparations and a New Global Order paper at the Abuja Conference. We also recognise the principles outlined in the guidelines on a right to a remedy and reparations. We reiterate that reparations are an ethical issue of justice for African people, accountability from our continued oppressors, and an essential part of our unfinished quest and struggle for Pan-African liberation. We are cognizant that reparations for African people at home and abroad has always been an emancipatory and liberatory project, not merely a compensatory one. We remain cognizant of the African United Action Front position paper circa 1997 to 1998, that reparations is a process, not an event, and that the objectives of reparations cannot be fulfilled by a mere transfer of resources from aggressors to their victims, although that is one objective in the process. But in fact, that reparations begin with Africans reclaiming ourselves, returning to live the African personality each day, reclaiming the African source, and recognizing that African culture is the main tool for the liberation of African people, and that reparations is fundamentally a process of self-emancipation. We endorse and commit to advancing a Pan-African approach to redressing and repairing the intergenerational crimes and harms of the Maangamizi in the three interconnected phases of chattel enslavement, colonization, and neo-colonialism. arising from the Abuja conference. We take stock of the call made in the Birmingham Declaration of the then Arm UK conference dated the 1st of January 1994 of accepting our responsibility and obligation to our ancestors for ensuring that the African identity is proclaimed, maintained, and developed, and that Africa is restored to its rightful place at the center of world politics. We are cognizant of the campaigning efforts of grassroots campaigners within the international social movement for African reparations, supported by the Stop the Maangamizi We Charge Genocide campaign, working in partnership with elected officials to co-produce the atonement and reparations for the UK's role in the transatlantic traffic in enslaved Africans, motions that were passed by Lambeth Council and Islington Council in July 2020 and Bristol City Council in March 2021. We are encouraged by the Bristol motion on atonement for Bristol's role in the traffic of enslaved Africans, which calls on the council, the mayor, and others as appropriate to support African heritage community organizations to galvanize support for our own reparations plans, arising from and in collaboration with wider stakeholders, and recognizing that reparative justice should be driven by African heritage communities' experiences, voices, and perspectives to ensure that advocacy messages not only reflect but also respond to the real needs of the community in order to recognize inequalities. Coming to the end, we reiterate the objectives of this inaugural conference and its panels, which I will not read because of time, and we commit to institutionalizing this inaugural conference as a standing international conference, the work of which continues through action-leading panels on the various thematic areas discussed over these past 2 days. We support the Germany-Africa People-to-Peoples Dialogue in Action Forum for Reparatory Justice, the Commemorative Action Learning Forum for Decolonization in the reparatory meaning of the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference for the Partition of Africa taking place in 2024. And we reiterate the wisdom advanced in the Abuja Declaration of 1993 in closing, that the pursuit of reparations by the African people on the continent and in the diaspora will itself be a learning experience of discovery and a uniting experience politically and psychologically. Thank you. Before we all disperse, can I call Elder Adai Sebo? Is he here? Elder Adai, is he here? Please come forward to give us a quick closing, very brief, because we are really pushed for time. But as appropriate, we have elders and honorary members of our community who have played a stellar role in taking us to the point where we're at today.
And my apologies, just before he does, I did forget to thank one key financial sponsor, and that was the RMT Black members. I'm sorry. That's what happens when you don't have a list. Thank you so much for your support. RMT Black members have been one group that have had a reparations conference every single year for as long as I can remember. We thank you.
Thank you very much. About
Yes, I've seen it. Thank you. Sorry.
almost 36 years ago, Belle, the mother at the Greater London Council, when we were working on Black History Month and the African Jubilee Year Declaration, she was attending nursery. Attending nursery at the Greater London Council. So I'm very, very pleased that they are the fruits of our labor. I'm very, very happy. Yes, I'm very, 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 very happy. I'm very pleased. And Black History Month was set up because of children. And it is our responsibility to make sure that every growing child in this United Kingdom has an appreciation and respect for the value of the contributions of Africa, Africans, people of African descent, to world civilization, and especially to the growth and development of this country from antiquity to the present. But please, in the 80s, when we were having such meetings, we saw a lot of children. The parents were bringing their children along. But this is missing here. We have to rectify that. Please bring your children and nephews to the next meetings. Draw them here, please. That is the challenge I put before you. And my last word is this: Africa is yours. Claim it. My generation had disappointed Africa. We have betrayed Africa. From the 1980s, when we took absolute power, to now, we have betrayed Africa. You have been kind to us. You have to kick us out and take over Africa. That is your responsibility. It's your responsibility. Kick us out. You've been so kick us out and take over. Because we are just like the colonial masters and the plantation owners. That is what we are. Africa is a huge Bantustan. It's a huge plantation. And you have to take cue from what the diaspora did in the 1940s. And they met in Manchester and decided that, no, Pan-Africanism abroad without a territory is meaningless. So Ghana, Nkrumah went in 1947 December, and by 1957, Ghana had its independence. And what happened? It just triggered the whole liberation process. So it is important that you are the future of Africa, you in the diaspora, please. I have no right, as an African who happened to be born in Africa, to deny you, or please, even not to say to deny, it's yours. You take over, and you have a better understanding of the struggle than most of us at home, because you have experience, you are in the belly of our colonizer, and you understand these things better. So please, Africa is yours. Take hold of it. Liberate it. Please, it's yours. It's yours. Own it, own it, own it, own it, own it. Please. My last word is this. We sit here for others to change regimes in Africa to satisfy their own interests. What about you? You have to change, kick my generation out and reorganize society in Africa in your own image and interest. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. I want to hug you all. I hug you all. I love you all. You have made this possible. And sometimes people say that there's no much content to Black History Month. But look at this enriching content. And Black History Month is your space, please, it's your space. It was created for you, and you have to fill it with rich content. We thank you very much for coming, the organizers, you participants. The future is yours. I want to see you the next time, but please come with your children and nephews. Thank you very much.